All right. Hit it.
Good evening, it's Casual. And Jonathan, bring us in as you always do with a little music.
All right.
Thank you, Jonathan. All right,
Thank you.
we have a
Do it
very
again.
special, extra long It's Casual tonight. We have a special guest, dare I
Mhm.
say it, a legendary character actor from film and TV. I've got him on the line here. Um, I want you to welcome Bruce Glover.
Hello.
Oh,
Bruce, how are you doing?
great.
How's the weather out there?
Um, kind of fine, it's California.
It's California weather. That's all that needs to be said. I'm gonna come right out of the gate. I'm gonna ask you, where did it all begin? What made you decide acting?
Oh, I never decided it. It crept up on me like a sneaky thing. It was not something that I had planned to do, and not that I plan to do most of the things in my life. It just comes at you, and this is the way I think life is anyway. You prepare yourself for lots of things, but you find out that you should have prepared yourself for that other thing instead. But in my tough guy, working class neighborhood in Chicago, I was, I'm pretty old, so I was a kid in the Depression era, and
Mm-hmm.
I learned something from the beginning of my time in being alive, that life is a series of onslaughts. There are things that come at you, and you learn to deal with them, and you find your own strength in the way you deal with stuff. And the life is not all sweetness and kindness, but you find that you're able to handle everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a theory that for myself at least, that the things that look like disasters are actually great advantages, because it causes you to grow and become strong enough to handle anything. So I was a kid in Chicago, and I remember being learning. I remember my first day of kindergarten. My mother dropped me off at the school, and and she left me there because she had other stuff to take care of, and the class hadn't opened yet, and there was a kid who saw me, ran at me, and started beating me, and I didn't know I hadn't had a fight yet in my life, so I didn't know what to do. I just laid down, and finally a teacher came out and stopped it. But I learned eventually to be tough enough to handle everything. And that was basically my life as a kid in Chicago. Was every day you had to be tough. You had to handle this or that. And I remember one of my early fights, I was called into the principal's office because the guy who I'd had a fight with was there with his mother, I believe, with his face kind of pretty well marked by the fight he had with me. Oh, no. And they asked me about the fight, and they said, "What happened?" I said, "Well, I was coming down the stairs, and this guy was still on the stair above, and he leaned over the railing, and he hit me. And I don't know why he hit me, but I didn't do anything about it. I just got away from him, and I ran through the playground. And when you get to the gate of the playground, I go to the right, and he goes to the left, but he didn't go to the left. He followed me and caught up with me quite a bit later, and he was going to hit me again, and then I started hitting him, and I backed him up, and he started to cry, and then finally he ran away. And I didn't run after him. I let him go. And then the school teacher said, "Okay, Bruce, that's good. You can go back to your class now." That was the daily thing in Chicago as a kid for me, was that you had to be tough, and you had that somebody was going to be coming at you until you develop a reputation where nobody really wanted to come at you because they knew it wasn't going to pay off. So, again, I had my first job at the age of 6, and I never job from then on. I look at the stuff kids saying, "Oh, they had to start working very early." They were 13 years old and they were at work. I started working at 6 and made 10 cents a day for delivering groceries. And I always had a job. I delivered meat for a butcher on a bicycle. I went door to door selling magazines. I worked on a newsstand in the Loop in Chicago. My father brought me down to the Loop in Chicago at the age of 7 or 8 and had me making deliveries for him all the way all over downtown Chicago. And I never thought of it as bad. I always thought of it as, oh, this is what you get to do. And I somehow managed to enjoy everything. I enjoyed delivering groceries at 6. I enjoyed going door to door trying to get people to buy this magazine or that magazine. And to me, work is what life is. And eventually learned that you have ability to do everything. So acting for me was not something that tough guys in Chicago did. I was an athlete. I was a good athlete, and I played football, and I was a wrestler, and I could play any sport, really. I certainly could punch people out if I had to. I was kind of a nerd, but I was also reading books and stuff. So at one point, they they had a teacher found out that I had learned a slime trick, and I hadn't learned to read. And this was in first grade, so I got flunked in first grade because they discovered I hadn't been able to read. What I did was I would see the picture, and the picture on the page, and listen to somebody say the words on the page, and then I would quote it, and then finally they discovered I couldn't read. So they flunked me. And then they gave me an IQ test to find out what was wrong with this kid. And the IQ test, I didn't know it then, but the IQ test said, this kid is extraordinarily smart. But there are odd things about him. And so...
Which is most of the time the case.
What?
People with high IQs usually are kind of quirky. They kind of have their own kind of personality.
Yeah, but people found me quite charming and were very loving. Women liked me as a little boy and as a middle, as an older boy. And somehow women always kind of liked me, which was pretty nice. My mother liked me. My sisters liked me, and girls at school liked me, and like. That's pretty good. But I didn't. When they gave me that test, I got the idea that I was dumb. My thought was I didn't know that I had the high IQ score, and I didn't know it until probably around fifth grade. A teacher took us into the school library, and she said to the class, okay, all of the class can go to wall 1, 2, and 3, and Bruce and Irene can go to wall 4. Well, wall 4 was the college level books. And I suddenly realized, wait, I'm not dumber than everyone else. I'm smarter. This was the first time I realized it. And again, I'm already working in the loop in Chicago. I leave the school every day and get on a bus to go on a streetcar and go down to an elevated station, then go down to the loop in Chicago and go to my newsstand and hand out newspapers. So the idea of being an actor wasn't there at that point. I was just a working class kid, but I had a tendency to enjoy life. Even though I had to do scary things like getting on subway train and sometimes going the wrong direction and finding myself in Evanston instead of in Chicago where I was supposed to be. But things like that make you grow, make you stronger,
right.
and you have to have a sense of humor about it, which I always had. But acting was not something that you were going to do, and but I did have an instinct for it, and nobody knew that I had this instinct for it. But I remember at the age of, my mother used to take me to movies, which my father forbade, but we used to sneak around and go to movies anyway, because he was very religious, and he said theaters were bad places for Christians. And
wow.
And so, in fact, I've got a short film that I would like to do animated, which involves that very thing about the evil of going to movies. And here I am, a movie actor.
Yeah, I mean, everything you've told me so far basically has said there's no way you're going to be an actor. You're living in Chicago where acting is verboten. Your father says, I don't want you to go to the movies where acting happens. It's verboten. Wow. So talking about terrible things that lead us in a direction in our life, you actually ended up in the Korean War, am I right?
Yeah. But that was by accident.
Mm-hmm. How old were you when you went in?
I guess I wasn't drafted at first because I had the good IQ score and I passed all the tests. But then I flunked English, and I had a football scholarship offered to me, But then they saw some grades, and I went to a junior college in Chicago, and I played football. I was on a championship football team in high school. We played in Soldier Field, and I was a good, strong running back, and I used to play defensive end, and so I helped us win this all-city championship. We won the public league, and then we beat the Catholic League champs, and we were all champs, all-city champions in 1949. Good God. Most of you people listening weren't even born in 1949. So there I was playing football at this Wright Junior College in Chicago, and I flunked English, and that got me drafted for the Korean War, and got there the last 6 months of the war, and I managed to, because I had a ruined elbow from one of my, I managed to stay out of the infantry. I got to be a cook in an engineer company, and I learned a lot doing that. Strangely enough, you're observing people. I used to work out with weights and stuff like that on cook days and play basketball, and it wasn't all that terrible. I got shot at a few times, but nothing hit me. I'm lucky. So Korean War, and the Korean people are terrific people. I had a great deal of fun with them. But I was in a tent full of guys who had learned to use cocaine in cigarettes, and I was dealing with living in a tent with coke addicts. The only good person in tent was the Korean houseboy who I had to enlist to help me and warn me when they were trying. I one day had a fight with about 3 of the guys and knocked them all down and stuff like that. But they tried to poison me with putting bad stuff in my canteen, so I had to have the Korean houseboy protect my canteen, and it was it was a bad situation in that way, but somehow I survived it all, and eventually got to come. But one of the great things that happened in Korea, when the war finished, the University of California started sending teachers over and offering classes. So I picked up 9 hours of college credits in Korea, and one of the credits I finally picked up was, I figured I better pass English so I could pick up that football scholarship that was offered to me at Colorado College. So I had this course, and at the end of the course, the teacher, who was a very nice man, pulled me aside and said, "Bruce, I don't know what it is with you, but there's something odd about you. If I went by your grammar scores, I should flunk you again." And I went, "Oh," and he said, "but you write terrifically." He'd given out writing assignments, and I'd written 3 nice short stories, and he said, "You're a terrific writer, so I'm going to pass you, and I'll pass you with the lowest grade, but you get you past it so you're over with." Well, nobody knew it back then, but there was I have a minor in psychology. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in speech, which I finally got at Northwestern University. I have college credits from, 4 different colleges. So, but finally I got my degree at Northwestern, and my degree is a Bachelor of Science in speech. So I can't stop talking. So don't try to stop me. It's terrible. I have a minor in psychology, and I studied. One of the reasons why I wanted to study psychology was everyone I knew was nuts, and I wanted to find out why and that kind of thing. And I was nuts, so I wanted to find out that too. So,
helps you dissect some of the roles that you've gotten.
Well, I I have a unique approach to acting, and I think I'll explain it as we go on.
Mm-hmm.
But psychologically, here's something that happened when I was a little boy. My mother took me to see movies, and I'd seen FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, struggling to get to a microphone at some point. I'm sure that the Republicans were trying to make him look bad, and you never saw FDR once he got in office. He made sure that they never saw him do that. But I was intrigued by watching him as a little boy, and I think I was. I don't know.
Now, let me interject that at that time, you would see a newsreel before the movies, as well as some shorts like The Three Stooges or a cartoon from Hanna-Barbera or what have you, before you actually got to see your movies.
Yeah, there was well, it was great. You got to see the newsreel. You would get to see a cartoon. You might get to see Flash Gordon. And then you see 3 movies. And
it was an afternoon.
Yeah, and you would come out and make sure that God hadn't come down to strike you because you were in a bad place. So if you were lucky enough and you get home and your mom was there, then you knew you would pass. God hadn't come back and changed the world while you were in a bad place. So, and you'd end up in hell. But that's how much I liked movies. I would risk being in a bad place, and when God came back, you would be left behind because you were in a bad place. You'd go to hell. So that was my understanding from my early days in church. So
it's the devil's work.
Yeah, it was great stuff. Religion at its best, telling you you're going to hell. Which
it hasn't changed that much.
Well, eventually there are going to be people. There are good people who have religion and they use it in kindness, and
yes,
all of the religions have some extent of kindness and goodness and
You're
stuff
correct.
like that. That is power.
Most of it.
People get in control and they start embellishing stuff to feel powerful, and they make people feel scared and in danger, and that allows them to get money from them. So it's pretty creepy what happens with things like religion. But my seeing FDR was very interesting to me, and I would show my mother stuff that I'd seen at the movies, and I showed her FDR struggling with polio, with his crippledness, to get to the microphone. And my mother watched me, and she said, do you love your president? And I went, yeah. I didn't love my president. I just found it interesting. Mm-hmm. And that's, in a way, my whole approach to acting. I didn't know I was acting then as a little kid, but the instinct was there, was observe people, see how they function, and then to get into the way they function and then start to live their experience. If you're not living the experience, then you're acting. And I don't believe in acting. I believe as a character, and that you're playing in a movie, that you become that character. And if you look at my IMDb Pro, and I suggest people do it because there are long sections of demos of me doing a wide variety of roles. And if you look at it, you'll see no character is the same as any other character. I would do an entirely different person because I would become that person. Now, that is my approach to acting. I become the person. Mm-hmm. And some actors are always themselves, and they're still good actors because they live the experience that's in the script. There are other actors who are acting, and God, they're awful. But what the whole acting thing is, it came at me in a sneaky way. I mean, I'll tell you another event. My father church, Forest Glen Methodist Church in Chicago. I wonder if it's still there.
Uh-huh.
It's a nice little building. But I was in a church pageant at the age of 3.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 3 houses, stables. Mary and Joseph were looking for a place so that Mary could give birth to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I was the 3rd place that they contacted. And this was a little pageant at the church. Little churches, set
Right.
200 probably. And so I was the 3rd person, and I'm like 3 years old, and I had one line. And when they came to me, they would ask me if they could, and I would say, no room at the inn. That was my line. And when they got to me, I said it with my little barrel-chested boy, no room at the inn. And the whole church burst into laughter. And I liked that. I thought, this is great. So I said the line again. And they laughed even more. And I said it again. And finally the minister came up the aisle and ran at me to catch me. And I dodged behind the altar and through the chairs and stuff. And finally he caught me and carried me down to the basement. But while he's carrying me, I'm yelling out, no room at the end, and everyone is laughing, of course. So I have an instinct for laughter. I like to make people laugh. And
Me too.
there is a way of making people laugh by coming up with crazy ideas, but there's also a certain amount of technique to it. It's an odd thing, but there I was, the instinctual things, and I always had an ability to, make up stuff, and I would do things, but being an actor for us tough guys, and we used to talk, I had to dress like a hoodlum. There were ways of looking that you would dress that you would look like a tough guy.
Yeah.
And there were also the way you would talk. So you would talk like this. If you didn't talk like this, you were a sissy. So you had to talk like with a deep sense of
Chicago.
Yeah, yes, Father. Yes, I know, Father. So what, Father? So if you didn't talk that way, you were a sissy. So I was, like I said, I was an athlete. And I used to work out with weights, and a buddy of mine who was also, and we also did art projects there. So there was an instinct for me to do, instinct is what I'm basically pushed to people, that inside each one of you, there is an instinct to go some direction. And if you're lucky enough to find the good instinct, and there might be a bad instinct there too, that who knows, that came out of some cruelties of your life, but cruelties are teaching platforms. That's things that you learn how to handle. In my years in the loop in Chicago, I guess I worked at that newsstand from the age of 8 to 13.
Mm-hmm.
Cold winters and summers, and I made $6 a week, so I was way up from the 60 cents I used to make as a delivery boy.
Mm-hmm.
But then I got into, I worked in a glass factory from the age of 14. I lied about my age because you weren't allowed to work until 15. But at the age of 14, 15, I worked in a glass factory, ladling hot glass. And it was another education. And but I was working out with weights with a buddy of mine. We did art project. I'll tell you about my first art thing that I remember doing in cold Chicago, and I guess I was before I was in school, so I couldn't have been more than 4. I had seen a man urinate on the side of the house that I lived in, and when you had to do your pee-pee, you had to go all the way up, and we were in the 2nd story of this house in a small apartment up there. You had to go all the way up there, take all of these winter clothes that you had on to do your job upstairs, And I saw this guy do his job on the side of my house, and I thought, maybe I don't have to go all the way upstairs. I can do what that guy did downstairs. So I went over to the same spot where he had done his work, and I did it at the age of 4. And that was my first outdoor pee-pee. And
that's a logical thing at that age. Yeah, I mean, I could see the logic there at that age. Sure.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I'm still able to do it, but you know. So at 4 years of age, then I found the family encyclopedia. I like to say it was the Bible, but it wasn't. But the family encyclopedia, and I did a drawing in it at the age of 4. So I was already drawing stuff, but this is the first drawing I can remember. And what I drew was a drawing of a house with a smiling face, and it had a penis, and it was peeing, and it was very happy. And that I wish somebody would find that encyclopedia for me, because I would love to have that copy that I did get. But that was, again, instinctual art. A little boy did a drawing of what he did, but instead of just doing a little boy doing it, he made the house do it. So the house kind of became my pal, helping me do my job. So instinct is there, and if you can find it, you'll find that it pops up in your life one time or another. There are people that have instincts for mathematics. There are people that have instincts for science. They want to find out something. And then there are people who never find their instinct, and they end up doing a job that they hate their whole life, and they can't wait to retire. Well, if you find what you really love doing, and you're doing it, then you will do it forever and never want to retire. I mean, I'm not retired, even though I'm old. I'm still working at
Yeah,
stuff.
you're still working. You've got some IMDb credits, very recent. And one of the audience members has asked me if you could tell how you got into acting, and I'm going to cut to the chase and say you were actually doing USO shows when you went to the Korean War, right?
No, I was a soldier.
Oh, I thought when we talked on the phone the other day, you said that you had done some USO shows, and that's really where it all kind of began.
That was somebody else you were talking to. I never said that.
Okay.
No, I was drafted into the Korean War. I was a soldier.
Okay. So after you left the Korean War, what got you into? And your career really kind of began with some small movies and then television. You did a lot of television in the '60s.
Yeah, but let me tell you how I actually got into it.
Okay.
So you just want to jump into titles and stuff like this. But here it is. This buddy that I used to work out with and do art projects with said, "Bruce, you got a good build on you. You ought to go down there and pose at the Art Institute for the art classes."
Oh. Okay.
So I did. And I'm posing at the Art Institute in Chicago, which I used to go to anyway, looking at art. And I'm posing, and across the room is a beautiful naked woman. And luckily in those days, we guys got to wear a jockstrap and hide our deficiencies. And the women were totally naked, which was great. Anyway, this woman came up to me at the break, and she said, "Bruce, how would you like to..." And she paused at that time, and I am a guy, and I've seen her naked. And like to was running through my mind. Yeah, I'd like to. And she said, "And be a gorilla." I went, "What?" I thought, what is this, some kind of new sex thing that they do in Chicago? Gorilla. And it turned out that she was a stripper, and she had a strip act for strip clubs. And it was called Zareen and Ngagi. And I went to meet the guy who owned the act, and he said, yeah, go down to the Lincoln Park Zoo and meet Bushman. Bushman was a famous 400, 500-pound gorilla.
Okay.
That So I went down to the gorilla, to the ape house, and he was way at one end with a double cage because he was very famous. And there were a bunch of people around this cage, and I was down at the other end with orangutans and chimpanzees. And then the people left the front of his cage, and suddenly Bushman looked over at me. I was quite a distance away, and he gestured at me like, come here. Now,
It was fate.
Yeah, and I went to his cage, and I stood in front of it, and nobody was around, and suddenly Gorilla Bushman said, Bruce, don't tell anyone I can talk. I went, okay, Bushman. And he said, now, I'm going to give you your first acting lesson. I said, okay. He said, Bruce, think my thoughts. I went, okay. He said, do my moves. I went, okay. And he said, that's it. That's your acting lesson. Get the hell out of here. And I did. I met Bushman later, but I'll tell you that one later on. But at any rate, that's what I did in the rehearsals for the 8 Act, and we went down to Tampa Bay, Florida, not too far from you, I guess.
Right.
And we were in a nightclub in Tampa Bay, and strip clubs in those days. And the act was like 15 minutes long, where I came out, scared the audience, went up on the stage, scared the girl, then she'd scare me off, and I'd go rest back with the band, and then I'd come out and finish the act, and kind of like, I won't go into the details because, oh my God,
So it's like, again, back in those days, the stripping, in the strip clubs, they had like vaudeville acts, they had comedians and gorilla acts before the strippers came on.
Well, the strippers were very dignified in those days. They would hardly strip at all. I mean, it was like,
right.
They weren't tap dancers or whatever.
Right.
But so at any rate, there were a variety of people in the club. There were people who were dancers and singers. And there was kind of like a common dressing room, and this magician working in the club in front of everyone took out his magic wand, and he went, Bruce, and he tapped me on the forehead, and then he tapped me on each of my shoulders, and then he tapped me on my nose, and he said, you are an actor. I said, what do you mean? He said, you make that gorilla so believable, you ought to try acting. I went, really? Acting? And then there was a guy from New York who was a singer in the club, and he said, yeah, you ought to go to acting classes in New York. And I went, acting classes? There are classes for acting? And I still, in a way, don't believe in acting classes. And I could go into detail about that variety of stuff that people teach people that is totally unnecessary. But again, my sudden realization that somebody was saying, you're an actor, was pretty surprising. And that kind of cooked for me. And that was just before I got drafted for the Korean War, because I was doing, still playing college football, and I was playing on a semi-pro team on Sundays. I would play for my college team on Friday or Saturday, and which was terrible because I had no day off, and then I'd play with my pro team on Sunday, and I'd make $10, $15 a game, and sometimes if I made extra touchdowns, you get $5 for extra touchdowns and stuff like that. But at any rate, then I got drafted for the Korean War, and I passed English because I wrote good stories, and I came back, and again, getting drafted was one of those terrible things that happened, but no, it wasn't. It was something that was a learning process, and I learned a lot in Korea, being with Koreans and being able to survive living in a tent full of dope addicts and being able to come back from the Korean War with a passing in my English score. So I was going to be able to pick up my college football scholarship at Colorado College, which also had a good art school. And then another one of these disasters, which end up being a gift. I came back with malaria.
Oh my goodness!
And the malaria made it impossible for me to be able to pick up my football scholarship until I got cured of that. So I went back to that college where I played football before, and I was to pick up some more college credits. And I saw a play being advertised for an audition, Camino Real, a Tennessee Williams play. And I went to the audition, and the director said, "Come back for the callbacks." Well, at that point, maybe I kind of got scared of the idea of acting, so I didn't go back to the callbacks. And I'm walking down a flight of stairs at that college, and I see this director coming at me, and he said, "Where were you? You didn't come back to the callbacks." I went, "Yeah, I got busy with some stuff." He said, "I want you to play the lead." I went, "Oh, okay." So I played the character Kilroy in Camino Real, and I was terrific. And I never read a book on acting. I'd never even been in an acting class. I'd never heard anyone talk about how to act.
But you wowed everybody with your gorilla act.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have told you something. Everybody's telling you acting.
Yeah, I was an actor, and I didn't know it. And I did it, and I was always doing it, and I didn't know I was always doing it. From the time I got my last in the church for Snow Room at the Inn, and
Okay, I got a personal question here. This is from one actor to the other. One actor who started in stage to another. The first night when you got the applause at the end of the show, how did that feel?
I don't know. I just took it as, it was fun. I liked it. I liked being applauded. And I was terrific in it. I danced in it. It was a good opportunity role.
Yeah.
And just my instinct of acting, of being Kilroy, did it.
Yeah.
Kilroy was the famous thing that you'd see it. That Kilroy was here. Kilroy was here. That was during the Second World War, people. That was the GI. And so I got great reviews, and I remember somebody coming up and saying, "Boy, and the way you did that accent," I said, "What accent is that?" I still have to descend in those accents. Well,
the Chicago
I went
accent.
to a summer stock company, somebody had told me about. I did a couple plays in community theater around Chicago, and I even sang in an opera. Das Rheingold, and that was another career area that I could have gone down, where I'm a terrific singer, and that was my.
You are a good singer.
Yeah, and but I could sing silly things. I did Guys and Dolls and Summer Stock and stuff like that. I did a lot of singing, and I remember the first when I finally got to New York. But that's a trip away. Anyway, I went up north to Wisconsin, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. There was a little theater that they did plays every week, and they hired 3 actors, but they didn't hire me. I was one of the no hire actors, but they had open casting every week. And I went up there, and I lived out of my car and slept on the porch of the theater.
This was New York.
And this is in Wisconsin.
Oh, Wisconsin. Okay.
Yeah, from Chicago up to Wisconsin.
Okay.
And now I'm in Wisconsin, and I'm sleeping on the porch on a thing or in my car and sneaking into the kitchen to steal food because I don't have any money. And eventually, then the people around the kitchen put a lock on the thing, and the other actors who knew I was starving made them take the lock off so I could still sneak food out of the thing. But I played a leading role every week. And again, kept getting great reviews. And it was that summer in Wisconsin, right off Lake Geneva, that I went to hell with football. This is it. I'm going to be an actor. And so the magician tapping me on the nose with his magic wand was right.
And so it begins.
Went to Northwestern University, and I did like a year and a half at that place, and I did another season of stock after that, in between the two things. And then I learned, what I learned at Northwestern was to lose my D's, M's, and O's accent, because you can't say, speak the speech I pray as I pronounce it to you.
Yeah,
you can't do that.
I would think that would fit very well, though, in your first movie, which was with James Cagney, of all people, Never Steal Anything Small.
Yeah, I had a bit role, which was... In fact, at one point, I yelled out his name instead of the character's name and had to stop. They stopped the filming.
Cut!
Yeah, I yelled out James. And I actually,
Did he call you you dirty rat? We got to do another take.
That's it. So what I learned at Northwestern was you had to go to New York, and that's where you started your acting career. So I did another summer stock season before, and then went back to college and did 2 more quarters and got myself graduated because I didn't want to do another quarter at Northwestern. I wanted to get to New York in the spring, and I went to a basin meeting with the guy and explained to him that I had enough credits to graduate, and he said, congratulations, you just got your Bachelor of Science. So
see, you do have a high IQ. You knew that it was very important to finish your college before you started a career. Whereas I dropped out of college to become a stand-up comic, and I've regretted it ever since. So,
well, I used to coach stand-up comics, so if you want to go back into stand-up comics, you're going to have to come to my class. I'll coach you, so that you have a new stand-up comic career, because... I coached a lot of stand-up comics at one point. Teaching for me was a natural thing to do, where I started teaching people when I was doing my first play, not ever having had a class. I remember the guy was kind of screwing up, and I pulled him aside, and I said, this is my first play. And I said, listen, when I talk to you, you should look at me and try to figure out what I'm saying and listen to where I'm saying it and figure if I like you or, try to understand what's happening with me. And when you talk to me, you should see how I'm reacting to you.
mm-hmm.
And he went, oh, yeah. At any rate, he didn't quite get it. But at any rate, that's basically all you do as an actor.
Yeah.
There was another acting lesson, kind of like the one that Bushman gave me. Think my thoughts, do my moves. Well, what's around you, and what do you let in? In a sense, somebody said to me that the best thing he ever said to me about acting was, it's not what you put out, it's what you let in. Mm-hmm. What you let in then cause an effect on you. That's what life is, what you're letting in. And what you do with what you're letting in is what your life is. And that's the way acting should be. If you're going to be a live, living actor, and there are live, living actors, who live the role. And
Right.
even if they're the same person, or there's some stars that are, they're just the same person all the time.
Right.
There are other weird people like me who become a different person in each role.
Right.
And yet you're living the role, whatever it is. My son is able to do it. Crispin is able to do it. Chris Walken, who I did a play with in New York and actually kind of helped him from getting fired from the play.
Oops.
Yeah, well, no, he's a great actor and highly intelligent guy and all of that stuff. But it was just a play that I was Robert Preston's understudy. Lion in Winter is what the play was called.
Okay.
And Chris had a role in it. And I was understudy for Robert Preston. And, New York, I had to pay my rent and do my stuff. But sometimes you took a job, and I had a job before that with the same director who was directing this play. And I remember it was a pre-Broadway play with Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons was a beautiful actress. She was, I remember I managed her. Ralph Maloney was supposed to be in that play.
Mm-hmm.
Ralph Maloney was a famous Italian actor at that point.
Right.
And was having trouble getting into the country. And I was his understudy. And so they had to start rehearsing Gene Simmons in the role. And I had to rehearse with Gene Simmons, who was a beautiful, sweet lady. And when we got to the first scene, the character was kind of, I'm taking you upstairs now. He was kind of a South American monster of a guy who just grabbed women. And so I grabbed Gene Simmons in the rehearsal, and she went for it, and we kissed. And I remember the director, who was gay, was going, no, this is just a rehearsal. But Gene Simmons and I didn't bother, and it was great fun,
The chemistry was there.
Yeah, and I remember reading a thing where 3 or 4 actors were talking about which actress was the best kisser they ever kissed in a movie, and all 3 of them said it was Gene Simmons. And I agree. So,
well, there you go.
Thank you, Gene. You have acting is a scary experience. So New York was a scary place, but I lived on the Lower East Side. 6 flights. Walk up was actually 7 flights, and then you could go up on the roof, which was 8 flights. That was nice. I had a great apartment on the Lower East Side in New York, and then when my wife saw me, my future wife at that point saw me in a play, I think she decided at that point, even before she met me, that I was worth going after. And she saw me playing Billy Budd in Billy Budd. And I was pretty terrific in that, in an off-Broadway production of it. And she'd seen me in it. And we toured high schools with that. And I did a lot of stuff. I did more summer stock. I did 100 plays, literally, in my time. 100 plays. And I did summer stock, where you do a play every week, a new play every week. You don't have time. Basically, in 5 days, you're doing a new play while still performing the play you did the week before. And you're rehearsing a new play, and then you rehearse the next new play, and then you rehearse the next new play. And I did 20-week seasons like that, and I did 10-week seasons and 10-week seasons, and sometimes I did the same play more than once. One 20-week season, I did Cat on a Hot Tin Roof twice with different cast members, and I'd done that already before another thing. My first Broadway show was a Tennessee Williams play, Night of the Iguana, which was a big step up.
So this was the late 50s, early 60s?
Well, I got to New York in 1957.
Okay.
And I got back from Korea in 1955. Spent the next 2 years getting my degree at Northwestern. Got out early, and I was in Korea in 1953,
Okay.
and I was back to New York. I was in New York in 1957, spring of 1957. The first job I got was a summer stock job again up the corner from New York City, and did another 10 plays, and again every week, and then you go back to New York. Luckily we had rent control in those days, so 1957, 58, 59, 59, late 59, I met my wife, and we married in 1960. So I got, and 1960 is when I also got Night of the Iguana, my first Broadway show.
Okay.
But before that, I did maybe it was 1961. 1960, I did an off-Broadway play, a play called, it was an Eastern Rabinowitz Tagore play, King of the Dark Chamber. And I played, I wore a big skirt and a gold crown and had a sword, and my face was green, and I did Kathakali dancing. And it was Rabinowitz Tagore, and I did that play for a year. And and I still lived on the Lower East Side, and I was on the Upper West Side. So you take lots of things, and then in between acting chores, I would still do posing. Before I was married, I was still posing now and then for an art class. I remember one art class, and when I was still kind of semi-starving before I'd pick up a little gig here and there, and I was posing for this art class, and that malaria caught up to me while I was posing for this art class.
Yikes.
And I fell from the platform, and I remember there was a woman posing in the room before, and she came running over, and the teacher came over, and the platform was, I was sitting on a stool which was 3 feet tall, on a platform 4 feet tall, so I had fallen 7 feet.
Wow.
And the teacher came over, and she looked at me, and I thought she was, because it was getting late, and I was going to be able to pick up the money, which I was starving, and I was, living on a box of buckwheat groats that somebody left in the apartment I was renting.
Shades of Wisconsin. Starving actor still.
Yeah, no, this is in New York.
I know. I just made a joke about Wisconsin.
Oh, Wisconsin, yeah.
That's where the starving actors are, Wisconsin.
Well, it could be. I remember seeing Rock Hudson's name in written on a timber in the basement where the dressing rooms were, and somebody said, "Yeah, Rock Hudson acted here in this summer stock company." And I said, "Well, was he good?" And the guy went, "Well, his shoes were always shined." I met Rock Hudson sometime later, but I didn't get a chance to tell him that story.
Probably a good thing.
Their shoes were always shined. That was great. So anyway, there I was, lying on the floor, and the teacher looked at me, and I thought she'd say, "Just go get your money. You've done enough." And she said, "Well, I think maybe you should just take a lying down pose."
There you go.
So
that way you both get your money.
I laid down and took the pose, and then finally I got my money. And when I came out, there was a standing at the bus station to go lower in the Lower East Side to my place. There was this woman to nurse me or something, but I got scared and of her, and I ran across the street to a store and bought some hard salami and started eating it right away because I had money. Then I went down to the lower, further down the Union Square on 14th Street, and then the fever started to catch up to me again.
Oh no!
And I started hallucinating, and I started seeing things, and I saw that there was a transfer, a crosstown transfer from the bus from Union Square down to Avenue B. 10th and Avenue B is where I live. And I had to transfer my hand. Suddenly wind came up and it was raining. And the wind caught my transfer and threw it into the gutter where water was flowing. And I thought I should grab that transfer. And then my malaria said, no, let him go. Let him be free. And I said, be free to the transfer. And the transfer thanked me and went free down the gutter. And I walked across town in the rain, and I saw myself turning, and I could see myself turning inside. I could feel the turning in me. And I pulled open my leather jacket, and I looked down, and there I was turning into a cornucopia. And I could look down into the cornucopia and see all of my gifts. I could see all the things that I could do, all of the acting that I could do, and I could see stories and paintings that I could do. And I was walking down to Avenue B, and I got to Avenue B, and there was a hooker at that corner. She was always kind of making, and I said to her, she was always trying to get me to come up, and I said to her, no, I can't. I'm a cornucopia. And she looked at me and smiled and said, okay, bye, cornucopia. And I went back to my apartment, and I lay in my bed, and I continued looking at all the gifts that were inside me. So anytime I want to feel that I could see all the stuff that I could do, and that's one of my things that I am. I'm kind of multi-talented. I can act, I can write, I can paint, I can play. I did eventually go back to sports, and I created a soccer team. And I played soccer for a good 20 years. And I had created a team, and finally my knee went, and I had to quit playing soccer. So if anyone can find me a new knee, I'll go back to playing soccer again. But at any rate, New York...
Well, we learned you shouldn't put salami on top of malaria. That's you'll hallucinate.
I can still taste that salami, you know. I don't eat salami anymore, but...
my daughter loves it. I can't keep it in the house. I buy it every week. She just scarfs it up. I don't even touch it.
Well, she's got a taste for it.
She's got a taste for it. She loves it.
Well, it probably goes back. I think of back to some of the Asian food that there's a certain spiciness and
that's true.
That that Asian flavor, and I remember learning to. I remember being in Japan the first time, and when they would let you go over to Japan, and I love the Japanese and I love the Koreans, and I wish we were more like them. At any rate, so there I was in New York, and then Broadway shows. I did 16 Broadway and off-Broadway plays, and sometimes the Broadway play would be like that one that I did with Gene Simmons. We only got to, I think we started in Boston, and then we went to Philadelphia, and then it closed there and never got back to Broadway. And you would get Broadway shows that would never go back to Broadway. I had one. Finally, I got a Broadway show that went to Los Angeles, and it what was the name of it? I'm slipping out. It was about Frederick the Great. And it was a play going to be, and was 3 months in Los Angeles. So I'd already come out here one time before because I was with William Morrison, I had a great friend, an agent there. And it was the last good agent I really had was that friend at William Morrison. He was based in New York. And he said, you have to go out to L.A. and start picking up, because he knew, and everyone could see that theater was dying.
Yeah.
Stage was dying, and you had to make the transition. So I had made a previous transition to L.A. for a brief period of time before I went back to do that play with Robert Preston and Chris Walken, who was in the play. Chris Walken was, I could see immediately that he was a great actor. But he was nervous, and I didn't have a part in the play, so I was there with the producers, the director, and the writers, and they had just fired a girl and replaced this girl with another girl, and Chris Walken was afraid they were going to fire him, and they weren't talking about it. So I pulled him aside after he'd come off the plane. I said, Chris, come over in the side lobby here. And I said, listen, let's start talking about what you just did, and I'll talk to you about it, and you can talk to me about it. And then every time you do a scene, come over on the side, and we'll talk about it. Well, we did that for about 2 weeks, and I said, Chris, I think you about got it. And he said, yeah, I think I do. And so we didn't have to do it anymore. And Chris Walken got not only didn't get fired, but he got nominated as new actor of the year on Broadway, and he deserved it.
Bruce, I want to thank you for helping me with that role. He's got a very distinct way of talking.
Yeah, he didn't talk that way.
When he was younger,
I don't know where that came from, but I never remember him talking that way. That was pretty good imitation, but I think it eventually became. I saw an interview recently. I haven't talked to Chris in about 15 years, but I had a film script that I sent to him. But we'd still be friends if we ran into each other. He's a great guy, and in fact, in Boston, once he had decided to that he was. We went from New York to Boston, and he was doing great in the play, and we're working in Boston. And after the performance in Boston, we're doing the performances in Boston, and that was one of the ones that finally went back to New York. But in Boston, there was a bar that you could go to that was still open after we finished our play. And I went to the bar, and Chris Walken's girlfriend at that time, his fiancée, who we eventually married, was a very sexy, beautiful woman, dressed in very tight jersey dress, and she was extraordinarily sexy. And Christian said that he would meet us over at this bar, and us was me and this little goofy guy that was in the play, and a little wimpy guy. And he and I went first, and he said, we'll come over and join you at that bar. So I was at that bar and sitting behind a table, and this little goofy guy was, and there was a pianist there, and he was making goo-goo stuff with the pianist and saying stuff, and suddenly, out of the darkness in the rear, somebody appeared behind this goofy kid and slammed a bongo drum on our table in front of him and said, play on this guy, and then disappeared back into the dark. So I'm a Chicago guy, and I remember, like being in a bar where a buddy of mine had have been flirting with a girl, and the girl's boyfriend went away and came back with a shotgun. I remember like shoving the door shut and pushing the shotgun, and the guy shot. So bars are not good places to be.
They can be dangerous. They can. We one of our viewers has asked, out of L.A., New York, and Boston, which was the scariest place for you as an actor trying to make it?
None of them.
None.
Nothing
Okay.
scares. Nothing.
Good answer. Scary? What?
Yeah, it's all fun. You know, I mean, it's not scary. It's like, how do you deal with it? Every place you go to, you deal with what is there, and if you're lucky, you get help here and there. Like, I remember the other actors in that summer stock company where I was living out of my car, making sure that I got food, and eventually getting me to move in to one of their rooms. So I was, for a couple of weeks, I got to live inside. And, you know, there are people that will reach out for you. There are a lot of kind people in the world, and if you show your own kindness, you know, I mean, I've just invented a new religion. It's called be nice.
There you go.
That's the only rule.
Boy, that certainly seems to be something that's diminishing over the years. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it works, you know. I mean, hey, be nice. People are nice.
Yeah. You know, be good to each other. What's wrong with that?
But being scared at any place, well, yeah, there are things that, like, you have to deal with this. There are mean people in some places. You will run into mean people. You will
Saw one at the post office today. Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's what you get.
Yeah, I just came in entitled, I want my mail. You know, I'm like, dude, relax. Understood. It's out there. Were you still doing theater when you started to get movie roles in the early 60s? Uh-oh. I think I lost him. Let me try calling him again. Whoops.
Hello?
Hey, I lost you for a second
You got
there.
cut off.
Yeah, wonder what happened there. The question that I asked when you got cut off was, were you still doing theater when you started getting movie roles in the early 60s?
Well, the first movie things that I did were small films in New York. So you would still do your theater, of course, and I even did a couple plays in Hollywood, in L.A. And
Well, you actually played a Martian in Frankenstein Meets the Space Monster.
yeah, pointy ears and bald head.
Yeah.
If you have bald head, you will get pointy ears, and you will attract all the Martian women. They like those pointy ears. So, yeah, and at one point, I thought we talked about that before. But
we talked about it right before the show started. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, that was one of those roles where you are just lucky to get the money. You know,
yeah.
It was all filmed. My stuff was all filmed in a garage in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And there was previous stuff that was shot I think in Florida, actually, with things like that. But all of the talking things were all done in a garage. And I remember, doing this stuff where, it was, I never saw the film because it was just, I knew it was terrible. I didn't want to see it. I did see it later, but I didn't want to spend the money to see it.
Well, there you go.
Because it was a B movie with an A movie, and I didn't like the A movie, so I didn't bother going to see it ever. But there were film parts that would come up for things like that.
Yeah. And then television, you started to really take off with, I mean, doing spots on Perry Mason, My Favorite Martian, Rat Patrol, Mission Impossible, Bonanza, Mod Squad. I mean, you were hitting all the regular shows back in the '60s.
Yeah, but who knew they were regular back then? I mean, I just got on there. Rat Patrol was one of the films I picked up in my second time in LA.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the first time I came out and I did the Perry Mason show,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't get to see that until later. And then later I realized, hey, I was good at that. You know, surprising.
Yeah.
To me, it was just on the instruction of my agent saying, go out to LA
Yeah.
and pick up some stuff. So I picked up 3 shows and in that first visit, and then came back to New York to pick up my understudy role in understudying Robert Preston. So there I am doing that play, and that play ran shortly. It didn't run that long, but it was a decent run. And then we got, I'm thinking of sequence after that. So after I did that, then I auditioned for a play that was, by the way, Chris Walken was terrifically good in that play, and he had to audition for the Actors Studio 3 times.
Oh, wow.
4 times before he was allowed in. Now, I auditioned for the Actors Studio once, and we had to call back, and people who had seen the call back called me and said, we want you in the Actors Studio, you're terrific. But the head of the Actors Studio, Strasberg, turned me down.
Lee Strasberg.
Well,
yeah.
I never went back to the Actors Studio to audition again. But Chris Walken, Dustin Hoffman had to audition 4 times, 3-4 times.
Oh, wow.
And I was Dustin Hoffman's understudy in one of the plays, one of the off-Broadway plays that I did. And I could see in a minute how great an actor and how talented an actor Chris Walken was in Dustin Hoffman. But Strasberg made them audition 3-4 times for letting them in the Actors Studio. Now, what is that except an ego getting in the way of real talent? Real talent is seeable, and you can see it if you look. That's all. It's there, and if you're
and obviously all the
playing
aforementioned people that you mentioned, they're extremely talented actors. Yes.
Yeah. And so, if you look at some people that are, but I never went back. I didn't get into things, but I didn't ever go back to the Actors Studio. My ambition wasn't to be in the Actors Studio. My ambition was to work, make money, pay my mortgage, pay for my marriage, pay for my rent, pay for my, support my wife and my kid once I got married. And I'm lucky that my wife saw me, and she saw me in Billy Budd, which I did a good job in. And then down the line, there was another play that I had to lead in that was being rehearsed. And she had a part in the play, and she came up to me, and the first day when you do theater, you would do that read-through where everyone would read through the play. And different things are different. Like summer stock, it's zoom. Broadway, you get to read through the play, you take your time. Off Broadway, it's faster. You have different schedule on your the days that you play and days that you don't play. And the interesting thing about is that you do get time to work on it when you're doing these long plays. There's like the difference between that and I even did repertory. Repertory where you do a play, then you open a second play, then you do performances of the first play while you're rehearsing, and then you start having 5 plays, and you do 2 nights of one play, 2 nights of another play, 2 nights of another play, and 2 nights of another play. Again, things that actors don't have to do anymore. But boy, is it a learning process. Doing summer stock is, what a learning process that is, where you don't have time to fiddle around and worry about how good you're going to be. You just do it, and you end up being good because you're just good. And,
I can't remember who told me, but somebody said when I was young that, you would learn the most about acting if you did summer stock.
Definitely. And there isn't any summer stock anymore. I don't believe.
Again, that was back like in the 80s, the early 80s, I think, when they told me that. And I was just starting out as a stage actor.
Back to 1955, where I did my first summer stock season. 56 and 57, 57 I was in New York, but then back to summer stock, and then back to New York, and then back another summer stock season. Back to New York, and back to summer stock again. You would jump around wherever you had. At my first audition in New York, I was offered a role in a touring company of a musical, and I was in the chorus, and I was an understudy and everything. I turned it down, and people were surprised because it was decent money. But I didn't want to. I had just gotten New York, and I didn't want to leave New York. I wanted to conquer New York. I wanted to be a New York actor, and I didn't want to be out on tour for a year. So I turned it down. But again, my voice, my singing thing, was something that I ignored at that point. And there's a band right now that wants me to start singing with them. So I may, eventually, when I finish my art book, I may go back and do a singing album of some sort.
Putter Smith is still playing. He's somewhere in LA there, and he's still playing. And I actually reached out to him, telling him about this show, and I was hoping that maybe he would pop in and say hi. I just realized I forgot to send him the link.
Well,
so I hope to get him on the show sometime.
You should. I mean, Putter was one of the great gifts that was given to me for Diamonds Are Forever. I mean, that was an opportunity, and Putter was part of the gift.
And that was 1971. How did that happen? How did you get called into the auditions for a James Bond movie in 1971?
Well,
and not just any James Bond movie, but the Bond movie where Sean Connery agreed to come back for one more time.
Yeah. Lucky me. Because, there's another gift, working with Sean Connery.
Yeah.
It's a terrific thing. Well, here it is. Agents, sometimes in the old days, agents used to be your best friend. Then eventually, agents become kind of like your danger, your dangerous thing. They're trying to push you for stuff that they're not imaginative. Your agent, back in the old days, was the guy that was my agent was a friend, and we would have dinner days together. And even after my wife and I were married, he and his wife, it was a friendship, and he saw your talent, and your talent. My talent was variability. That I can do almost anything. I can change from this to this to this. The danger of nowadays agents is they just shove you into one slot, and that's what they did to Chris Walken.
Yeah.
Chris Walken is capable of doing a variety of things, and in his early days and in his days in New York, I watched him have variety. That Walkenizing of him, and I saw him talking about, he would accept a role and want to do the role that was given to him, and then they would Walkenize it. And I heard him laughingly talking about it that way. But Chris Walken doesn't have that Walken. Even now, he's still, if you're talking to him, he doesn't sound that Walken imitation that you did.
A lot of people do that impersonation.
I know. Well,
I know.
It's attractive. And he said, he would want to do the role, and then he'd come back, and they had Walkenized it. So he'd have to go back and do that Walken kind of thing. But, you look at, so an agent, your agent can become your enemy.
Yeah.
What got me the roles that were important were casting directors.
Mm-hmm.
A casting director that recognizes you, and you still may go through the agent get to your casting director.
Right.
Once you impress a casting director, they're for you. A casting director can be your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
The casting director who sees you and then their job is to convince the producers and directors of whatever the project is that you are worth looking at. And they can even be, and they can be really, I had one casting director which said, I'm bringing in Bruce Glover. He won't be like anyone else. Everyone else will be approaching this thing and saying, he will bring things to the role that nobody else will bring. And it is always extraordinary and different. And that's the way that would be a good casting director. Well, there was a casting director who actually, I was doing a French role in playing a French guy in a what show was that? It was George Hamilton was in the show. I was playing a French doctor in the thing where I was being a French doctor, and there was a casting director named Billy Gordon, and his wife was studying French at the time, and she happened to see this show, and where I'm doing this French accent. He says, "Oh, Billy, there's a new French actor in town. Come and take a look." And he looked, and he watched me do this French thing. He said, "Yeah, he's a good actor." I said, "Look him up." And he thought I was French. And he was so impressed when he realized that I wasn't French that from then on, I was the top of his list. Billy Gordon set me up for a role in a Stanley Kramer film that were these two guys who were they were like drifters or pool players, and they were like there was six. This is one with the kids traveling, trying to save buffaloes. What was the name of that film? And but it was a Stanley Kramer film, and I went up, and the audition. Stanley Kramer had an audition with just 6 guys there, and we just each did these 2 roles of these 2 guys who were pool players in the film.
Mm-hmm.
And the audition was nice, and he was nice to all of us. And then he said, "Okay, here are the 2 guys who are going to do the roles." And he said to 2 guys, and I wasn't one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And he then decided, that he had done his job, and it was not an unpleasant experience. And I went on my way. And then I got a call from my agent saying, would you like to do, what was the name of that thing? Buffalo something. And he said, would you like to do that? I said, oh, there's another role. He said, no, the same role that you went up for. Billy Gordon told him that you were his second choice. Because one of the actors pulled out of it to get another job that was 6 weeks longer, and this was only going to be 2 weeks in Arizona. And so I said, well, yeah, I'm happy to be the thing. So when I got there, before I got there, I just had a meet with Stanley Kramer, and I went to his office, and he looked up at me and he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm Bruce Glover. I'm going to be playing one of those pool players." He went, "Oh, yeah. Well, I wasn't his second choice. He didn't even know who the hell I was. It was Billy Gordon decided, and he lied to him and told him that I was his second choice." So there I was in Arizona, getting ready to do this role, and I'd never played pool. I'd never played cards. What's the name of the card?
Poker.
Poker. I had never played poker before,
mm-hmm.
and it was a chance to be with Stanley Kramer. And so I played one game of poker and got to get a little sense of what he was like. He's a tough guy.
Oh, really? He's one of the big Hollywood directors of that time. I remember one of my favorite movies is "It's a Mad, 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 Mad World," which he did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he was. Listen, I love Kramer. I'll always love Kramer. He was great. But we were in a little hotel in Arizona,
mm-hmm.
and down the ways we were right above the Grand Canyon, and there were the little hotel. There were two women that spotted me, and they started flirting with me. And they said, "Why don't you come out with our husbands and I down to this great bar? They have great music and stuff." And I said, "Yeah, but I've got a film tomorrow, so you have to get me back by 11 o'clock." And they said, "Oh, yeah, we'll get you back by 11 o'clock.
Oh, famous last words.
To this bar, and the bar is, when I'm approaching the bar, we're going in, and I see this guy hanging onto the bar, like a drunk, and he's hanging on the bar, and you tell me he's just about to hurl, and I figured we better get past that guy as fast as possible, and we did. We got into the place, and two girls and I and their husbands, and the guys disappear and start flirting. And I'm looking at the dance floor, and I'm looking at little skinny cowboys dancing with big giant women, and I'm wondering that's why they can herd cows and ride bisons and stuff like that, because they're not afraid of big giant things, big giant women. And then when we came out of the bar, the guy was my girl was still there, and I went, "Oh my God!" And I realized it was a wax dummy. It was the best thing I ever saw. Even had sweat on the thing, and and you see a lot of those in Arizona in bars of these wax figures, and this one was fabulous. Anyway,
when I got
back to the hotel, I didn't get back there until like 1 in the morning. They were too busy. And when I came out, and there was some woman was pointing over at me, and the two women that I was with were talking to them, and they're pointing. They said they want you to come to a party. I said, "I've got to get back to my hotel. I've got to shoot a movie tomorrow." And they went, "Well," and they went, and I saw some cowboy guy getting into a truck, one of those little skinny guys that dance with the giant women. I said, "Are you going up the road there?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Can I hitch a ride with you?" And he said, "Yeah, fine." And he took me up to the hotel, and I managed to get 2 hours sleep in. But I got to the set, and everything that had happened came into the character.
Yeah.
And the character was, "Ooh, you got a shotgun. Oh, you got a shotgun. Oh, you got a boombox." And the character was simply there. All the stuff that I'd done the night before came into the character.
You had picked it up, yeah.
And Stanley Kramer was walking around behind the camera going, "This is," I could tell he loved what I was doing. And the role got extended until it did become the 6-week job, so that after it left because it was 6 weeks, he was in Miami or something. didn't get, so I got to do the role, and then we got to do the next thing. And Kramer said I was the most take over actor. When I finally got to the final scene where we're indoors playing pool and playing with the boys, and I think, what's the film named Buffalo Bushido? I think that was what it was.
That's one on
But
the
I
list.
played
That's
with-
one on your list. Yeah.
That's what the film was. And Kramer just said, "What do you want to do?" And I ended up directing the whole scene. I said, "Can we move over here and do this?" And then, and he said, "You're the most takeover actor I've worked with since Lee Marvin." And he said, "I'm going to make you into a star." And eventually, so again, you get into sometimes casting director are your best friend, like Billy Gordon was. Billy Gordon took me from that role where I'm playing this, poop kicker cowboy type guy. And now he's going to push me for Diamonds Are Forever, where it's the first time in history of film that two characters are going to be gay.
Killers. Yes.
Yeah, two gay killers. And so so Billy Gordon pushed me for that role, pushed me. And great director, Guy Hamilton is a great director,
Right.
great to work with.
Right.
And terrific, So he and the two producers were just having meetings with people. And I didn't get to read the script. I didn't get to... I didn't even know the characters were going to be gay.
Okay.
And again, like the gayness was something that came in later. So we would have these interviews, and I knew he was a villain. And there was an interview where finally they said this was they've gotten it down to three characters, three actors who might do these two roles, Mr. Winch and Mr. Kidd. And there was me, Putter Smith, and this other actor who I knew slightly, who I knew was a good actor, and he was more physically like Putter Smith, and there was me. And I figured, oh my God, I've got the role. One of the characters is mine.
Because Putter had never acted before, right?
And the other actor, and Putter was there, and he was kind of grumpy, and I didn't think, and I thought, well, I know this other guy, and I know. So I kept telling them what a terrific actor this guy was. And then I didn't realize until later he was my competition. Putter Smith was the one who was at the role. Guy Hamilton had seen him play it was a Thelonious Monk band, and had gone to seen that, and saw Putter Smith playing bass fiddle, and he's a bass fiddle player. Right. And he had such an interesting physical quality when he was playing the bass fiddle, and that Guy Hamilton decided this is one of the two guys.
He said, I want him.
Yeah, so he was cast, and I didn't know that I was telling them not to cast me, but to cast this other guy instead of me.
Now, we talked about this before the show, and when I was doing some research, I found out that there was a missing scene. There was a deleted scene from Diamonds Are Forever, and I would like to show that now, if I could, if you'll wait for just 1 second.
Sure, go ahead. Tell me
Renee,
when to
can
talk
you?
again.
Yeah, the scene is where a character named Shady Tree, who's one of the bad guys, gets killed. And we'll show you the scene that happens in the movie as it's edited, and then we'll show you the deleted scene.
Shady Tree. Shady, we just adored your act.
What taste, style?
And we have a few suggestions.
Critics and material I don't need. I haven't changed my act in 40 years.
Hold it. Don't go in there. We didn't get the real diamond, so we need Tree. Alive.
That's most annoying.
And here's the scene that was cut.
83. Shady, we just adore your act.
What taste, style? And we have a few suggestions.
Critics and material I don't need. I haven't changed my act in 40 years.
Ah, this one's surefire.
That's the oldest guy.
And then this one will kill you.
Come on, fellas, a popping gun and squirting fly routine. You gotta be kidding.
Two's company, Mr. Wynn. And three was a crowd, Mr. Kidd.
So there it is, what could have been. Now, you told me that actually they cut that scene because they just felt that it made the sequence drag.
Yeah, I think the editors, they edited out, there were stairs and all kinds of stuff. They just needed to, hurry it up. It was just dragging, yeah.
I see.
It had nothing to do with the actors. I mean, it had to do with the footage of the camera angles and shots, and it just piled up, and they just finally cut it.
I see. Okay. But I'm glad that I found it because I thought it was, a nice scene. And I wanted to share it.
Yeah, well, that Shady Tree was a great guy, and, I liked working with him. But getting back to the realization of that these characters, when finally I got the part, I met with Guy, and Guy said, "Is there anything I can do for you?" And I said, "Yeah, Guy, don't tell me which character I'm playing. Because, again, this is this weird thing that I approach acting in a way. I don't want to know what I'm going to do. I don't want to be rehearsing the lines in my head ahead of time until, in summer stock, you do plays while you were moving and doing the action, so it was tied in. So you would do your lines in combination with what you were doing in rehearsals for when you were doing your play. That's the one advantage of summer stock is you did your actions while you were, you do your business and stuff while you were doing your lines. So it was a combination of actions and things. Where if you start thinking of doing lines, that's separate from the actions. So I didn't want to know which character I was playing because I didn't want to be thinking of the lines because I had finally, when I read the script, realized that these were going to be the first two gay characters in film. And my wife was a ballet dancer, and she had lots of gay friends, super people, were very talented, and gays around, I remember one of them saying, "Oh, if you two get divorced, I don't know which one I'm going to marry." I remember going, "Well, it won't be me, buddy." But I remember, I used to play and be funny and goofy with gay people doing stuff like that, but I didn't want to do that as a character. And I didn't know quite what I was going to do with the character when I realized that these two guys were gay characters. Well, the Guy Hamilton said, "Okay, I won't." He said, "Well, why don't you want me to tell you?" And I said, "I don't know, Guy. I just don't want to know." And he said, "Okay." And he told Potter Smith not to tell me which character he's going to be playing. So there I was on a day when we were going to do our first shooting, getting makeup and wardrobe and stuff out in the desert, out from Las Vegas, and I still didn't know which character I was going to play.
Wow.
Now, this is one of those strange things that I do as an actor. I give myself difficulties on purpose to make something like what you let in is what is important. And I didn't know what I wanted to let in. I didn't want to know what I was going to put out. And I don't ever want to know what I'm going to put out until I do it. And so I'm there, and I suddenly realize I didn't know which character I was going to be playing, and I suddenly started panicking. And I thought I better talk to my acting teacher. So I called myself up and I said, Bruce, what are you going to do? What's that? I said, Bruce, you're locked up in a ball of failure. You have to get outside the ball. You have to get out. So start getting out. So I started looking up at the sky, blue sky, blue sky. Then I started looking at the sand, and it was sand. It wasn't sand. It was dirt. And then I started looking around, and then suddenly the breath of air in like 7 in the morning out in the desert came in, and I felt great. And I looked around, I went, wow, I feel great. Now, there's Potter Smith. We're gay. I looked at him, and he's got this snagly mustache and snagly teeth and goofy lips. And I thought, gay people kiss. I don't want to kiss this guy. So if I don't want to kiss him, I don't want to do anything else that sexually that gay people do. So there's no sex in this thing. Sex is out. It doesn't matter what gay people do. This is not about gayness. This is about Potter Smith being fun to look at. He's hilarious. He's great. He's like a giant toy. I just have to punch him in the corner of his button there, and he's my toy. Potter Smith is my toy. That was the character's relationship. Potter Smith was my toy. Very jealous of my toy. My toy. Nothing to do with sex. It had to do with his being my toy. Then a guy came over and said, Bruce, come over and pick out your scorpion. I went, oh my God, I'm Mr. Wint. I'm going to be holding this scorpion. I don't want to hold this scorpion. And I went, oh, ick. And I said, wait a minute, you show-off actor. You're going to be the only guy in the set with a scorpion. So pick up the scorpion and be the guy who has the scorpion. I've got a scorpion and nobody else does. I've got a trick. So that was the character. I've got a trick and he's my toy. That was the whole relationship, and that's how I came. And, you know, an hour later, I was on set with Sean Connery, and I was great, getting laughter and all that stuff. I remember.
Now, you stayed friends with Sean for a long time, right?
Pardon?
You stayed friends with Sean for a long time.
Well, I can't say, you know, yeah, we were friends when we were working together, but I never saw him again. At one point, we were shooting a scene late at night, and Sean didn't know me yet. It was like 2:30 in the morning, and we're shooting a scene where we're going to put Sean into the trunk of a car to bury him in a pipe.
Right.
And I'm holding Sean chest to chest. He doesn't know me. It's like 2:30 in the morning. All the stand-ins have gone away, and we're being lit. We're there posing for the camera so they can get their lighting right. And I'm chest to chest with Connery, and I make jokes on sets all the time. And previously, when Potter and I had blown up the helicopter and we're walking off into the desert sunlight, and we reach out and hold hands and walk off holding hands. Well, when we shot that, then it was done, and Hamilton said, okay, cut, and I yelled out, you're blushing, to Potter Smith, and the whole crew laughed, and they cut that scene out 5 years after it had been released in the theater. When it was first shown on television, the scene was, they cut out that moment where we held hands. It was way too daring.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was too outrageous. I mean, now I guess they put it back in.
I remember it was 1982. I graduated from high school, and I got as a gift from my parents, my graduation gift was one of the first VCRs with the tapes, the top loaders. And one of the first movies that I got was Diamonds Are Forever. Watched that thing, oh my God, maybe 100 times. So
well, great.
Holds significance for me. The next big film you moved on to was the Walking Tall series. You actually did all 3 of the movies. you started out with Joe Don Baker in the original, and then Bo Svensson.
And Buford Usher
Right.
was on set constantly.
Right. For the
during
first one.
Filming, of the first one. And then when I don't know why, but Joe Don was going to do the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Buford was going to do the sequel, but they wanted to give a screen test first.
Mm-hmm.
So they built 3 sets, and I was going to do. Buford and I had become good friends, good fun, hilarity, joker kind of friends. He was there every day of screening.
Yeah, we have a picture of that actually, and Buford Pusser is the character that the movies are about. He was actually there for the first one. And again, you made good friends with the actual Buford Pusser, the guy that the movies are about, because he was there. Yeah.
And when he was going to do his screen test at Paramount Studios with 3 sets, and me and Buford and the director, a step-in director, who so Buford arrives and we greet each other, and he says to me, "Bruce, I'm scared to death." I went, "Oh, well, yeah, that's a good place to start, Buford. Fine." And so this goofy director comes over who was able to say, roll them and cut. That's about the level of talent that he was. He said, "Okay, let's read through it." And there's like 3 or 4 scenes, I think. And I'm doing my deputy with Buford's character,
right,
and doing a hijacker that was later played by a black guy. And we had, we read through it, and this director was wobbling from one foot to another, and he went, then he suddenly whirled on one foot and said, "Let me know when it's lighted," and walked out the set. Buford looked at me and he said, "I was terrible, wasn't I?" I said, "Yeah, you were." And he said, "What am I going to do?" I said, "Listen, Buford, you remember when you used to be out on patrol and you'd be in your car and you'd be driving and you'd see a car doing something and you would like start following them, then you would call in their license number to see what was, if there was anything out on that thing, and then when you decided you were going to stop them, you turned on your lights and see how they reacted, and then when they pulled over, you would stop your car a couple feet out so that you would be protected by your own car from oncoming traffic, and you would walk towards his car and you would look through the back windows and see if there was anyone in the back seat, and then you stand behind his shoulder looking to see if there was anyone in the passenger seat and see if there was anything in his hands, if he had anything, and then when you asked him to get out, you walked the way he got out, and you would talk to him, and you would talk to him about and see how he reacted to your talking, and you would watch his hand and make sure he didn't have a gun. And he said, "Yeah, I do all those things." I said, "Well, that's how you act." He went, "Oh, okay." And he was terrific from then on.
There you go, acting is being.
That was Buford and he was amazing. And we did all these scenes together, and then there was a final scene where I was already out of uniform, and I was just an off-camera voice. And I said, "Buford, my son is up at a Boy Scout camp." My wife taking Crispin up to a Boy Scout camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supposed to go up there to a campsite up in the mountains. And I said, "Buford, my son is up there and you don't need me anymore for this, and I'd like to get up to Mercedes." And Buford was always about family, you know.
Yeah.
Buford was all about family.
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, you go on up there, Bruce, and I'll see you in Tennessee." And I reached up, and he was up on a truck platform, and I reached up and goosed him. I said, "I'll see you, Buford." And he said, "I'll get you." And we were both laughing as it went out the door. And that was the last time I saw Buford.
Yeah.
he was murdered, and his daughter, Luana, told me the story of his murder and how he had been forced off the road by a tractor trailer.
Yeah.
And she had was following another car, and she got out of her car and got these two tractor trailer guys standing there watching Buford lying under his car, turned over car, and she said, "Help me get it." They said, "Not on your life, lady." And later on, she looked and saw that there were skid marks and stuff that this tractor trailer had forced Buford's car off the road and into a turnover. And she crawled under the car and pulled Buford out from under the car. And she pulled him out and held him with his head in her lap. And she looked down at him and he looked up at her and said, "Luana, Luana, Luana," and died.
Oh, man.
And she, by this point in telling the story, I had to get a paper bag for her to breathe into because she was hyperventilating.
Yeah.
And it still moves me to think of the death of my good friend Buford in that way. And
you were his most faithful deputy.
Yeah. Well,
they in the movie they even tried to bribe you and you wouldn't take it.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
Because
and, again,
Buford saved your life earlier. We actually have that scene here. Can we play that?
Great.
Yeah, that's the scene that I chose. I felt it was apropos.
But the scene where
in the bar where they're trying to bribe you.
Making 20 years as a deputy. And all you got to do is testify that Buford deliberately ran you off the road. That's murder and the end of him.
Now think it over.
Don't get that crap, Brady. You'll do it or else.
I'd be dead if it weren't for Buford.
Christ, can you ever figure people?
You can never figure people. Well, unbelievably, 2 hours has already gone by. we have about a minute and a half left. Is there anything that we're definitely going to have to get you back on again?
Yeah, I think so.
I only went through a half a page of notes. You had a lot of stories to tell, so we'll definitely have to get you back on again soon. You are teaching an acting class now, are you not?
No, I just do online right now.
Online
until
teaching?
This COVID is over. I don't know if I'll ever teach. I'm working on my art book right now, and I am an artist, a painter, and I've got other projects to do. I will do private classes with individuals who've been twice inoculated, and I am very careful about my health. And
yes.
Get your shots, everyone listening to this. If you haven't gotten your shot, get them.
Yes.
And wear masks in situations.
Yes.
This thing isn't over yet, so be safe, be careful.
Not by a long shot.
You should be.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to seeing some of your art in the very near future. I'm hoping you'll send some of that to us. And you're on Facebook. People can find you easily on Facebook, right?
Yeah, and also do go look at my imdb.com and look at my demo.
Yeah.
And see the variety of roles that I'm doing and see if all of the stuff that I've said before makes sense after you've looked at some of this stuff.
Yeah, we didn't even get to your scary stuff, which came in like the 80s and 90s. And this is our Halloween month shows too.
To talk about.
Yeah. So we'll have to do that another time.
All right. And remember that Crispin and I did a film together, and that will come out eventually. And so will my art book. And look at my imdb.com and look at my demo.
Very good. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Bruce. We really appreciate it.
All right.
You've
Great.
got
I'll
such a
talk to you
wealth
soon.
of stories, and again, we'll have to get you on soon to tell us some more stories.
Great.
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too, and all you people listening.
And there it is, Crispin Glover's father, Bruce Glover,
Wow.
legendary character actor. A lot of stories. Wow. Again, I had 2 pages of notes. I didn't even get through half of them.
It was
Just
awesome.
Great stories.
Get him back as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
it was riveting. I kept looking at the clock saying, wow, this is the fastest it's ever gone.
Yeah, I can't believe it just zoomed by. Yeah. But again, I talked to him twice on the phone this past week, and the same thing. I mean, it was like 30, 40 minutes, and I was like, wow, I can't believe that we've talked for 40 minutes. But yeah, he's just got a wealth of great stories to tell about Hollywood and about people he's worked with in TV and movies. And it's just an incredible actor. And again, one thing I wanted to point out before the show ends is that he is very proud of his son, Crispin, and it's vice versa. Crispin is very proud of his dad as well. At one point, he went on a talk show. He was wearing the coat that his father wore in Diamonds Are Forever, which had lapels out to like his shoulders.
Wow.
That's how much he loves his dad. And again,
Yeah, a great actor in his own right too. I mean, check out his Crispin
Oh,
Glover.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
amazing. Just that name is like so iconic too. So everybody IMDb him as well. It's amazing. Yeah, there's so much more to cover. Like, there's just so much more to cover. It was a great interview. Well done, Rory. Thank you so much. So good.
Perfect
And then
job,
Jonathan,
both of you.
thank you. And then
Thank you guys for helping me put it together.
Yes, it was wonderful. And everybody who is watching on the replay, we want to greet you, all of the Bond fans. I know we're going to come in, Chinatown fans. You'll get to all of that the next time you interview him. I think he was up for another interview with you, Rory. It sounded
we got through Bond, but yeah, we didn't get to Chinatown. We didn't get to the scary stuff that he's done, and which is great stuff. So we'll have to save it for another time.
We'll save
Good
it for
night,
the best
everybody.
thing. Leave them wanting more, And Jonathan, do you want to promo One Hit Wonderful this week?
Yeah.
Yes, One Hit Wonderful, 7 p.m. Thursday night. We will have Renee and I and Roy will all be there, and we will be interviewing Emily Jane Roberts from Socially Distanced Fest. EJR will be on to perform her song Smoke Signals, and we'll take a deep dive into her musical background, who her influences are, how she got started in the world of music, and a whole lot more. And I hope you can tune in 7 p.m. Thursday night right here in KMH.
I hope the judge will be there. I think he goes through eye surgery that morning.
Oh, okay. We'll see. So it might be a
hopefully.
Best wishes to the Honorable Judge Hiram Stern. That we hope that everything goes well.
Best wishes to him in his LASIK surgery.
Yes. And thank you again to Bruce Glover for stopping by. That was awesome. And to all you fans out there. So everybody, till next time, good night. And be well, right?